Homosexuals that were outed before you were ready to come out. What happened? How did you deal with the aftermath? I am reading this thread and as a gay guy I am getting so many emotions. Anger, frustration, depression, etc. right now relating to everyone's stories. I'm glad to know I am not the only one. Thanks everybody. I'm not gay, but have had a few close gay friends throughout my life. One thing that I've learned is that coming out is not something you do just once. It pretty much occurs every time you enter a new social group, unless you are very forward and comfortable about it. New workplace, new friends, heck, you come out at every straight bar you sit at, and to every friend of a family you encounter. In each of these cases there is trepidation about coming out. And I had one co-worker in particular who was clearly not eager to let everyone know he was gay, which embarrassed the poor guy a lot when we were eating lunch together during work, and a friend of his outed him in front of me with "Oh, who is this? Just a friend" type questioning. He looked so embarrassed, almost like he had been caught in a lie, as though not immediately telling someone about that part of his life was a guilt-worthy endeavor. I concur with this statement as someone who is bi. The modus operandi in society is assumed straight until proven gay. This can make for very awkward situations as people will spout opinions one would not do so in politer or queerer company. Use this account already for this, but here's the story again. Basically, there was a boy who had a crush on me, who is probably the only lesbian he knows. I was not public about my sexuality because I live in a fairly conservative area. I pretended to be unaware of said crush because I didn't want to risk him thinking I friend-zoned him or whatever nonsense. I told a mutual friend that I had already come out too, and we laughed about it. However, that friend ended up telling the boy to back off because I was gay, without telling me, mind you, so I was unaware that she did this. He backed off, and nothing happened that I was aware of for some time. This was during the summer, and we came back to school. A few months in, the friend pulls me aside and tells me that she learned that the boy has been 1, telling people he was rejected by a gay girl, and 2, that gay girl was me. She didn't know how long or how many people he had told, but she knew through her boyfriend, who wasn't even a close friend of the boy. Needless to say, I freaked the frick out, had a bit of an anxiety attack, crying, etc. The thing is, the boy's not aware that I know everything. He thinks I'm oblivious. So I'm waiting for the ball to drop, because I still see the dude every day and haven't said a word about it. Dealing with the aftermath by pretending nothing's happening, that I can get past this with my head down and vehemently denying any rumors. Accidentally outed myself to my dad one St. Patrick's Day by mistakenly texting him something about a guy down the bar from me. I immediately noticed and followed up with "Yep, I'm a homo." He replied, "Don't drink and drive. Love you." I told 3 people in our small group of maybe 20 that I was bi. I explained it to them. They were all supportive. I told them I'll tell the others when I'm ready, as the reason I told them was cause they asked me if I was. About 2 weeks later at a party, I found out everyone else knew after one of the others bought me a rainbow toy and they said I saw the rainbow and thought of you. I asked why and she explained, "Aren't you openly bisexual?" And I said, "Wait, what?" I was shocked for a while and then said, "Yeah." Then she said, "OA has been telling everyone. So now I try not to tell much, but at least my friends know. So now all my friends know I'm bisexual and I feel a bit better with myself even though I didn't really tell them. They don't treat me any differently, only their jokes about gay and bisexuals occur less frequently. I also find that girls are more willing to speak to me. I'm unsure of why that is. Small group of 20 inches. My parents have this history of interrogating me and usually I lie, but it just kinda came out of me once. I totally wasn't ready and I kinda wish they didn't know. It's not that I'm ashamed of it. I just feel weird because now I know my mom is picturing me fricking a girl. I'm bisexual, but I was outed when I was in middle school. I had a few close friends who knew, and one of them must have told. It was a rough few years. I was bullied pretty relentlessly, and I still have problems with interacting with my peers to this day. When I got to high school, it became trendy to know a gay person, and as one of the only out people, suddenly, all of the people that bullied me now supported me. I was outed by my ex who colluded with a girl who was I wasn't into her. He managed to message all my friends on MySpace. Facebook still had a V and wasn't available at my college yet. My fraternity brothers did not care and were super supportive. The wrestling team not so much. I still have a couple scars from when a bunch of them jumped me. Thankfully my family was still in the dark and are pretty indifferent to my sexually. I hope you press charges against and sued the crap out the guys who jumped you. Holy crap. I feel so bad for everyone in this thread. The entire concept of having to come out is balls. You should be able to be who you are and not have to fear anything because of that. I'm sorry. Really appreciate that. In general it's a much better environment than it ever has been, but even after that first major experience of coming out, and even if it goes well, it's an unnerving prospect to meet someone new or travel somewhere with strong conservative values, because you never know. Here's a placeholder comment for all the LGBT people who dealt with this by committing suicide, and therefore can't answer for themselves, and those whose lives were taken by others. Bisexual here. I was dating another girl and told a friend who told everyone else. I got asked a lot of invasive questions and had to deal with cyberbullying for a while. This was in the era when cyberbullying didn't exist as a concept, so I was pretty much on my own. My life was hellish. Finally I signed up for a new AIM account without all my old friends on it, and my life was more peaceful, until I added that one particular loudmouthed friend, who told everyone else my new screen name, and the harassment started up again. Blah. So I made a new account again without adding them this time. I was pretty active on a lot of web forums, so I made friends with people from all over the world and got a lot of cool music recommendations and a lot of life lesson advice talks. It was nice. I spent a lot of time indoors, though, so maybe not the healthiest thing. I happened to have a really good health teacher who knew what was going on, and she told me about a local youth group for queer questioning teenagers. I started to attend, met some new friends, and wound up attending a lot of conferences about safe sex, assertiveness, relationship safety, etc. Because of that, I learned a lot of things that kept me safe later on in life. Also I got a sweet volunteering gig for a while, so I feel like everything kind of worked out in my favor, even though it sucked at the beginning. I went to a therapist for my anxiety, depression, possible OCD. I mentioned that my symptoms had gotten worse after a breakup, but didn't tell him who I was dating or that I was bi or anything. So he turned right around and told my parents that I was sad after a breakup, and that I'd get over it eventually. Cut to my parents having no idea that I'd dated anyone, and my mother connecting the dots that I had dated a girl. I only hung out with her for a few months, so it was pretty suspicious already. My parents weren't upset about me being queer. They were upset that they had to hear it from a therapist. A therapist that I don't want to tell them in the first place. Oh, and later, after that therapist had been fired on molestation charges, the new therapist met with me just to chat. Well, when I mentioned that I'd considered cutting, she called my mom right up and was very worried that I had been self-harming even though I hadn't actually cut yet. My mom strangled me a little bit, made sure I would never be so stupid or I would never tell anyone ever again at least, and then I never got help for it. TLDR. Frick, school therapist one inadvertently outed me while saying my mental illness isn't real, and the other led to my mom putting her hands around my throat. Frick, therapists. About 4 years ago, I hooked up with another girl. I was terrified. The first person I told was my aunt, my mom's brother's wife, who is a therapist and had alluded to trying to be a lesbian in college. I was feeling lost and scared and didn't feel I could turn to closer people in my life yet. Basically, I told her that I was questioning my sexuality. I asked her what I should do. Should I come out to my mom? Should I tell people? She told me to just keep adventuring and doing what feels right and things will fall into place in the future. It was actually a really comforting conversation. I slowly came out as gay over the next year to my immediate family and closest friends. When I started telling other aunts, uncles, cousins in a more casual way, surprise, I was the last to find out that Amy had immediately told everyone that I was a lesbian. even though all she knew was that I was questioning. Amy even told my mom, your daughter is a lesbian and you really need to talk to her about that. The very next day after I first talked to her, I freaked out and started getting panic attacks. I questioned every interaction I had with family members in that last year. It was pretty terrible. I still have anxiety about it. I can't even imagine how it might be for someone in a situation where they would potentially be made unsafe or experience violence after being outed. My family is generally liberal and no one cared that I'm gay, but the fact that they knew it before I even knew it makes me feel pretty powerless. What makes it even worse is that she's a therapist, and yet she's still fricked up. 17-year-old gay male here. I was outed to my mother by my ex-girlfriend a year ago when I was 16. Following our breakup, in which I revealed I was gay and just wanted to experiment with a girl to test my sexuality. It happened the day after I made out with her and she stuck her hand in my pants but I couldn't get a boner. I felt really weird about it and knew that girls weren't for me, so I decided to end it. Following the fight that night, she phoned my mother. They were really close cause I was with her for 8 months, and told her the reason I ended the relationship. My parents are strong Christian parents and my mother called me into her room and explained what happened. She said that she didn't approve of it and I was just going through a phase and agreed to keep it from my father since he'd basically kick me out if he knew. The next few days were rough emotionally for me as she was angry and I was scared of what would happen to me. A year has passed since and my mother has grown to be more open-minded towards it and even knows I have boyfriend now and lets me go out with him. I'm grateful that she loves me so much that she puts my happiness before hers since she really wants grandchildren. My dad still doesn't know, however, so I hope when the time comes he responds the same way as my mother. Being outed by my angry ex to my mom was a blessing. I'm really glad things are looking up. I just wanted to say though that being gay doesn't mean you can't have children if you want them. I think I struggled with my own sexuality for a while because I didn't quite connect that I could still have kids someday and I really wanted to have a traditional family life at some point. Mum sort of put 2 and 2 together and pressured an answer out of my sister who I was already out to. My sister warned me things were going to be weird around the house. They were for a little while but now it just isn't brought up or mentioned anymore. My freshman roommate in college was apparently so fascinated by the fact that I was gay that he told everyone he knew in the dorm. It wasn't really a big deal since I wasn't keeping it a secret, but it was weird to have someone I'd never met before saying something like, "Hey, you're that guy's gay roommate." 7th grade. My mom read my diary and she told everyone in my family. My aunts wanted to send me to conversion camp. It took years of therapy between my mother and I in order to repair our relationship. I still don't think she understands what she did to me when she outed me, but we're better now and I forgive her. My aunts can both die in a fire. First time I've ever commented. From a straight male. A lot of these stories broke my heart. The hatred, isolation, and abuse some of you have been through is incredibly painful for me to even read about. I can't imagine what this was like. People are crappy. Acceptance shouldn't be the exception. Thank you. Middle school sucked balls. Everyone bullied me for being lesbian before I even realized I was queer myself. I went to Catholic high school instead of my local public school. It was great. I was very closeted my teenage years but had a small group of friends that knew. Anyway, I moved out of state and this girl I went to high school with messaged me out of nowhere and told me about her insane battle with bulimia, and it cut me deep because I felt like she just needed someone to talk to and confide in as I did too. So I decided frick it and sent her back a long heartfelt message about the fact that I was gay and she responded affectionately. I was so relieved. Another person now knows. Well, the next day I learned that she was on shrooms that night before and was kind of losing her crap or opening up to me irrationally. We were never even close friends really, but she was a sweetheart. That afternoon she called me screaming that I had sex with her boyfriend and she had known about it for a while and that him and so many other guys are gay and I just proved it to her. My heart sank immediately. I started receiving calls from my friends saying they were so sorry that she told everyone and they loved me. Then her boyfriend, whom is a very handsome man and old friend, calls me and says, "Hey sexy, I heard we made sweet love together." I just lost it and started laughing and crying hysterically. No one gave a crap that I was gay, obviously, but the reassurance that I got that day and how it all happened was amazing. She made it so much easier. Bless her heart. So I left my laptop in home for vacation on grandma house. Knowing that my sisters can't handle computer well except for playing video, I think I was safe. Then after coming home, I noticed in my recent playlist was all of my P collection. I was dumbfounded and hoping it was my mistake didn't remove them before, and my sister didn't open that. After several days, my sister asked me about the P and I just tell her it's my friend playing prank with me. Then she was okay with that. Not sure if she believes it or not, but one thing for sure, my mom should also know about this. Although there's no change happened after that. I doubt she believed that BS, but she sounded pretty impressed considering she watched everything, lol. Sorry if this is a little confusing. I'm taking this complicated story and summarizing it the best I can while leaving in the important details. For the record, I'm a girl. My cousin outed my ex-girlfriend and I to my mother because she felt uncomfortable seeing how close my ex and I were when we spent time together and interacted. Tony, my cousin, even asked me about my sexuality and I didn't give her an answer because I simply didn't have to. At the time I didn't even know what I identified as. I went with the flow of things with my girlfriend and didn't feel like I needed a label over my head. With this being said, mom wanted to hear it from my mouth. I assume my mother started putting 2 and 2 together and started observing our behavior around each other, which led her to believe there was something more than a friendship between my ex and I. For months, about 3, I denied the truth. Then eventually one night, after being questioned for what seemed an eternity, I broke down and confessed. I came out as pansexual to my mother, and a couple weeks later I told my dad through a letter. Surprisingly, my strict Christian parents took it a lot better than expected. They still allowed my ex to come over and spend time with me and even supported me throughout our breakup. Though they don't understand everything about pansexuality, they want me to have a healthy and happy relationship with whoever I choose to be with. Mistake number 1. I told my mom that I had wanted to see a therapist to talk to someone about my problems. My mother is a very prying woman. I went to see the therapist once and then my parents decided to throw my computer out of their concern for my mental health. They found that I was engaging in sexual relations with a boy whom I had recently befriended. First actual boyfriend. One-sided obsessive relationship. When I got home from school one day, my mom said she would talk to me after my father got home from work after forcefully removing my laptop from my room. After my dad got home, they started grilling me with questions about what I was doing, who I was doing things with, got very confrontational over my issues with self-harm. Haven't cut for years and just approached the situation without any consideration for my feelings. My mom was crying and my dad couldn't look me in the eye because of his Christian values. Then it turned into the blame game of, why do you think you can't talk with us? At this point I'm breaking down crying, not wanting to deal with the situation, and then they asked if I was considering harming myself. To be perfectly honest, I had been. As soon as I got home and knew something was up, I knew that they knew my secret and I wanted to die. These were the people who had yelled and cried at me for not believing in God. What would they do with a gay? They put me in a juvenile stress center to cope with my depression. This place was heck. They guilted you into living by making you feel bad and selfish for wanting to kill yourself. It was also a religious institution, so they talked about my homosexuality with a certain reverence. My parents and I are on much better terms 5 years later and after I've moved out, but I am still upset that they took my chance away to tell them I was gay. My parents still say insensitive things from time to time and don't realize some of the things they say or do are still hurtful. It gets better with time, all I can really say. When I was about 12 or 13, I watched a lot of gay P on an old computer with Internet Explorer. For some reason, I never thought to clear the browser history. Well, my mom saw it, of course, and it was the same day that my best friend, of the same gender, spent the night. My mom was being very passive aggressive towards me. I guess more so than most people would expect because my mom was very abusive, and I was terrified for the entire night. Finally, she pulled me aside and said, "I just wanted to let you know that I saw what you've been looking up. That's very disgusting, and you're sick. I'm gonna put you in a mental hospital because that is the grossest thing I've ever seen. Years later she acts like she's always been my biggest ally. I was a teenager and I had started dating a good friend of mine. It had been going on for about 2 months, and then I had the idea to buy her a gift for Christmas, something I just never did for anyone at the time. So as I was wrapping that gift, my mom comes in my room, looks at me for a while before asking, "Is Emily more than a friend?" I blushed, then said yes. Then she said, "Okay, you tell your father. I'm not breaking the news for you." Took me 4 months to tell my father and my mom kept pushing me to tell him because she was uncomfortable to know something he didn't. I was super stressed out because I had never heard him talk about that subject, so I had absolutely no idea of what could be his reaction. Once I told him, he stayed silent for a while then chuckled a little. As dads, we never see anything, and that was his. I had been so worried for absolutely nothing. My mom outed me to my aunt after she promised me she wouldn't tell anyone because I wanted to break the news to people myself on my own time. My aunt was dropping me off at work and mentioned my mom had told her. I was shocked and didn't say anything at the time, since it wasn't my aunt's fault. When I came home from work that day, and I yelled at my mom. In retrospect, I definitely could have handled it more reasonably. Honestly, I didn't actually feel angry. I felt betrayed and empty. My main goal was to cause a scene and make her feel bad for what she'd done so she wouldn't do it again. It worked. She apologized and I forgave her, and that was it. I don't think she's told anyone since then. Bisexual. Told my parents myself, but got forced out of the closet in 8th grade. Told 1 or 2 people who asked, because if you ask me something, I'm honest. But this was after not talking the better part of my first semester at a new school. At all. They told everyone who'd listen. Spent from then through high school being called a dyke, lesbian, prude and every iteration otherwise. I was pretty much the only person out in my grade till junior or senior year, and senior year I just stopped giving a frick, and mostly talking to classmates. I was 15 years old. My best friend's mother told my mother out of spite and entirely fricked my world. My mother cried for hours and my dad came home and lectured me on chemical imbalances in the brain and how I was sick and not gay. My parents restricted me from seeing my friends as they supported me regardless of my sexual orientation. The same day I was outed, I walked to the bridge that was near my house above a river high enough to kill me if I jumped. But I was too scared of surviving and being in that much pain, so I didn't do it. My parents made me attend youth groups, talk to our pastor, read from the Bible. It was awful. I was alone, had no one to talk to. I felt horrible. On top of it, they took away any access I had to the internet. The only electronics I could use were appliances and the TV. I developed major depression and became a shell. It was like this for 5-6 months before I tried to overdose on pain meds. Luckily I had a friend call the police on me after seeing a pattern of very alarming behavior. I was handcuffed and taken to a hospital where I spent half a year hospitalized in a ward trying to handle my depression and figure things out. I had to stay so long because all the while my parents still were horrible. When they visited in the hospital, they told the doctors that I was sexually abused. Sick in the head, the devil whispered in my ears. The very first time my mother came to visit me in the hospital, she blamed me for my own depression. I have never felt such satisfaction than I did in that moment, screaming at her to get the frick out of my room. Eventually, after a long time in the hospital and multiple wards, I was better. I had good medication. Me and my parents worked things out to a degree. I didn't have to go to church, but I couldn't date or tell anyone in the family I was gay. Those were some of the darkest parts of my life. The first 2 months of my hospitalization were the worst. I lost so much weight. I looked like a zombie and I slept almost the entire day every day. Now things are better though. My family is more opening of my sexuality. My mother takes an active interest in my love life and is a lot kinder than she once was. I am now in a loving relationship for over a year now with a man I love with all my heart. However, despite my parents' improvement, I have yet to tell them I'm in a relationship and don't plan to. Sorry this got so long. Just felt good to get all that out there. Not gay, but autistic. My teacher in year 3 was told in a parent-teacher conference, and I pleaded her not to tell anyone. Guess what she announced the entire class the next day? What a total B. When I was 17, my parents found P and a gay Christian website on the computer. Yes. For several years I had diligently cleared the search history. I realized I was getting lax about it and the thought occurred to me I might be self-sabotaging. My father loaded a program for parental controls on the computer and sat me down and told me he and my mother had found a therapist they wanted me to see. And so began my stint in reparative therapy gay rehab. At the time I knew reparative therapy was bulls, but I realized I had the emotional bandwidth to either A, deal with building an honest relationship with my parents and try and convince them reparative therapy was a con, or B, see a therapist once a week to placate them and focus on getting into a college that would take me the frick away from Alabama. I turned 30 last month and haven't lived in Alabama since I left for college at 18. When I was at a mental hospital, one of the nurses wanted to know why I was so depressed, suicidal, and that she wouldn't tell anyone if I told her. After 20 minutes in complete silence I told her I was trans. She then told my psychiatrist, whom I was not ready to tell. That was a really silly thing for that nurse to promise you. Never, ever promise to keep secrets for your patients. Always explain the boundaries of your professional ethics before they disclose things. I'm actually ace, but I was inadvertently outed when I checked into psych inpatient. My girlfriend told my mom we had broken up. Honestly, everything was so confusing and emotional I didn't realize that was what she was crying over. Not realizing I hadn't told her we were dating just yet. I dunno. I just don't tell people, life changes fast. Thing is, my parents are chill and were used to me showing no interest I am anyone. So it went surprisingly okay. I feel like I got lucky. Literally nothing changed, but the situation meant they were far more worried over my mental health than dating preference. My grandma kept telling mom she didn't like my GF hanging out with me so much because she would turn me gay. Lmao. Mom actually asked permission to out me if grandma did it again. Grandma was literally dying at the time, so mom wanting to defend me to her was a sign I'm much more than simply accepted. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.